The previous Princess Kikari has reached her limit and they need a new princess to ascend to the throne. The 12 Shusi pledged allegiance to protect the new princess. This guy is Arata. His sister ran upstairs to wake him for school. She wanted to accompany him, but he didn't need that. His mom and sister were happy that Arata finally laughed. When he was at school, Arata participated in sports activities. His performance was very good, but he did not want to join any team. Arata was bullied because of his gentleness. Even worse, his best friend Kokoro betrayed him. In another world, this guy is also Arata. He is arguing with his grandmother and running away, so she had to stop him. Arata insisted on denying grandma that a boy like him couldn't pretend to be a princess. She tried to explain it to Arata, but he wouldn't listen. Only girls can become princesses in this kingdom. But it has been 30 years since the birth of a daughter. The only person who could now save their village is Arata. Arata thought this was old-fashioned thinking. He picked up the legendary sword of the village and played with it playfully. Grandma told him to stop when she knelt in pain because of her age. Princess Kikari thought of the continent that had no daughter. Her reign was pushed to 60 years. She has reached its limit. Arata had to become a girl to perform the ritual. Arata was worried that if the princess find out, he and his whole family would be killed, but if he didn't, the result would be the same. Arata had to do it and reminded the servant to evacuate the people immediately. The princess came out to see Arata, and he thought that she looked so and wasn't like what he had imagined. The ritual began, and one of the 12 Shusi jumped out to slash the princess. She weakly resisted but couldn't defend herself. Arata appealed to the other Shusi, but no one responded. All of them betrayed the princess. Arata ran away immediately. Katagi blamed Arata for everything, claiming that it was he who killed the princess. Arata ran into the nearby forest. Arata in modern times is tired of this society. He wished he could disappear. Instantly modern-day Arata appears in the forest to replace the other Arata. He walked out of the woods wondering what was going on. Katagi led troops to hunt him down. Arata ran into the woods in fear, and he was teleported elsewhere. The Konoha servant ran out and hugged Arata. He still didn't understand when she led him back to the village. The princess was dead and now is the age of 12 Shusi. Arata went back to the village to tell the old woman everything. She believed him that he came from another world. She also believes her real grandson is not the princess's killer. Kanagi led his army in pursuit of Arata. He was told to hide in the cellar, but when he heard that the old woman and the Konoha servant would rather die than give him up, Arata didn't hide anymore and emerged from the cellar. He had vowed never to trust anyone again, but he couldn't watch others die for him either. The soldiers rushed in to beat him. Arata grabbed the village's legendary sword. He was startled when something strange happened. He was the chosen one. Kanagi then attacked him. Arata followed the old woman's word to awake the divine sword, blocking his attack. Episode 2. Kanagi was startled when Arata was able to block his attack. Arata stood motionless. The house collapsed soon after. In modern times, Arata's mom and little sister couldn't call Arata. Seeing some people gathering around something, they ran over to see and realized that Arata was sitting there showing off his body. The soldiers ransacked the house, but Arata and his grandmother managed to get away. Kanagi was not out of shock yet. Arata and his grandmother was hiding in a cave. She told Arata everything about this power. Each god existed in the form of a sword, and Kanagi's sword is the god of fire. Konoha slid food into Arata's hand, but he went out. Meanwhile, one of the 12 Shoisi advised Kanagi to capture Arata alive, not to kill him. Arata sat glassily in a corner. He regretted that he should have enjoyed the student life and not the one that suffered from unknown things like this. The Konoha girl ran to give the food again. She still didn't know that Arata was from another world, assuming that the forest erased his memory. Arata explained, but she still didn't believe him. Konoha hugged him tightly. No matter what happened, she would still be by his side. And Grandma sat in a corner looking at the sword god. She wondered how this sword could block the attack of one of the 12 powerful Shusi. Hearing something, she ran outside, and saw that Kanagi's men arrived. He captured her to threaten Arata. He pulled out his sword, but Kanagi gave him two choices: either Arata went with him or she would die. Arata had to follow Kanagi's words. The news of Arata's arrest reached the ears of all Shusi. This era was changing. Sitting in the carriage, Arata still didn't know what to do. Suddenly the necklace Konoha had given him lit up. It projected directly onto the wall of the other Arata's image in his room. They could talk to each other but not touch each other. Arata was furious when the other killed the princess, so that he carried the sin. Arata insisted he hadn't done that. It was Kanagi who caused this. Arata wondered if he could believe his words. Arata smiled brightly. If that was the case, don't believe it would be cleared up. The circle of light gradually disappeared. The next morning Arata was put on trial. Arata's grandmother was restless. Even if Arata was guilty, there was still time. She had something to ask of Konoha. Kannagi accused Arata of all his sins. He was angry to be betrayed. These people were not worthy of using the god's powers. Everyone demanded to kill Arata immediately, but Kannagi was the one who made the judgment. He banished Arata to hell on earth. Until he knew what power he possessed, he would not kill him. Konoha broke into the plane and was found to be exiled with Arata. She carried the magic sword. Arata was happy with this thing, they could escape. But when he picked it up, it didn't work. Suddenly he appeared in midair. Princess Kikari appeared to ask Arata for a request. Episode 3. What Arata said during the trial impressed the princess. He was qualified to succeed her. Arata denied because he didn't have any power. The princess was adamant to believe in him. Everything returned to normal. Konoha happily advised Arata to accept the fate the princess had given him. She would also believe him unconditionally. They had to hide the sword first. Konoha magically shoved it into his hand, startling Arata. It didn't hurt at all. The chosen ones could do this. They reached the island of hell and entered the room where everyone was talking about him. Suddenly 2 kids jumped down from nowhere. They have come to confiscate all the clothes he had brought with him. However, seeing that Konoha is so beautiful, the redhead decided to kill Arata to solely possess Konoha. The boy rushed in to attack, but Arata just dodged and tried to explain. Suddenly, an earthquake came, causing people to run away in fear. The iron wires emerged and took some people before finally stopping. There was a beautiful lady who came over to explain it to them. It was done by Gagoya Warden. Every day he would choose 2 people to eat them. She then took Konoha's hairpin and left. Kannagi did a lot of research without any information about Arata's abilities. Akachi mentioned Kannagi. He didn't care what Kannagi was doing but needed his place. Arata sat silently in a corner. He pulled out his sword and tried to use its power but couldn't. Konoha ran to show off an interesting thing he had found, the underground hot spring. Arata happily jumped into it and took a bath. Seeing a cut on his body, Konoha instantly healed him. This was the power that only her clan had. Suddenly the earthquake came again. Konoha slumped downwards. Arata ran off to ask everyone, but no one answered him. They even wanted to take his head so they could get a chance to get out of this place. Arata hid in a corner helplessly, unable to return Konoha. Suddenly there was a voice. He knew that Arata was the chosen one. The beautiful lady came out one more time. She introduced herself as Asome. She knew where Konoha was. Arata wanted her help and was willing to give her his valuables, but this time the lady did it for free. Konoha was taken by the redhead. Konoha was currently at the home of those 2. The little brother made an excuse to run out, giving the big bro privacy. Kanata also made an excuse to get out, catching sight of his brother lying motionless next to Arata. He thought Arata attacked his brother, so he attacked Arata right away. Arata took out his sword to block the blow, and then another man rushed forward. Arata kicked him away. Gichi lifted his head to explain to his brother that the stranger was the person who had just attacked him. They came to take revenge and took away the ring. Kanata left Gichi to Arata and went to find them. Gichi was taken back to Konoha for treatment, and Katana was back just a while after that. He wanted to fight Arata for a chance to get out of here. However, feeding time began, and Kanata was the chosen one. Next was Arata, but Gichi couldn't let his brother go alone. He pushed Arata away and let the tentacle catch him. Arata was stunned and just stood still watching them get caught. He had to save them. Episode 4, Kanata and Gichi were taken away. Taking responsibility, Arata decided to save them. He crept into the pipe. If he kept going, he could probably get to the warden. Katana woke up to found Gichi tied up in front of him. The warden will condemn these 2 here. Arata and Konoha went deep into the pipeline. Everything here was too dark to judge which way to go. Arata sat down and concentrated for a while, and then he took Konoha with him. Suddenly the pipe collapsed again, and they almost fell. Just downstairs Asome was right the floor below. She called out to them, but Arata refused that he needed to go to the warden to save the 2 brothers. Asome was surprised and told them that that was suicidal. But Arata didn't care either. He had to save them and overcome the warden if he wanted to get out of here. Meanwhile, Kanata asked the warden to give him a chance. He agreed to release the 2 brothers. They had to fight to death. Whoever wins was entitled to leave here. Kanata picked up his weapon and rushed to hit Gichi. Arata got to where he jumped down immediately and asked the warden to stop. He didn't care and attacked him. It's the same everywhere when life is flickering, every man for himself. Just like Kanata is attacking his little brother to save his life. Arata's eyes widened, but suddenly Kanata fell backwards. He deliberately lost so that his brother can get out of here. But the warden didn't keep his promise. He judges Gichi's crime as to betray his brother. Arata angrily pulled out his sword and jumped down to fight him. But if he couldn't activate the ability, he was unable to fight him. Meanwhile, Kanagi was on his way to the prison. The helpless Arata was about to give up when the power of friendship resurfaced. He couldn't ignore everyone's expectations and asked the gods to give him strength. The call was answered to Arata's side. All of the guards' iron tassels vanished. He revealed the true form of the warden to be an old man. He seemed to be in a lot of pain. Arata moved to touch him and he lost himself in the old man's mental world. He was also betrayed by his best friend. He asked Arata to set him free. Arata put down his sword and used all his strength to pull out the black sword. The black energy seemed to devour him, but Arata didn't give up. He didn't understand what people's hearts really were like, until they spoke in front of him that he believed it. Arata managed to pull the black sword out, which surprised the warden. Its true shape is very beautiful. The warden was freed. He handed over the power of his sword to Arata and entered his sword to follow his journey. Arata used his power to bring things back to the way they were before. Kanagi saw that and quickly approached the prison to find them, and he was stopped by the warden's spirit. Arata is currently out to sea with the two Kanata brothers. The warden mentions Kanagi's name. Arata was very strong because the sword he possessed was the source of all the power on this continent. Episode 5. Kanagi didn't expect it to be the sword that ruled the world. On the modern Arata side, his parents thought that he had lost his memory, so they planned to let Arata leave school for a while. But Arata was so active, he flew downstairs wanting to hunt. The other Arata, meanwhile, had just hit the shore after a life and death trip. The Kanata brothers' ship sank a little and thankfully they got to the shore in time. Arata stood on a high place looking the land. This is the first time he felt comfortable. However, he wondered what was about to come. Kanata took out a map of the territory for them to see. They were far from the capital of the princess's place. If he wanted to go there, he had to go through Kanagi's domain. Kanata explained to him the entire territory. Apart from the capital, 12 Shinso each ruled a different region. But then, seeing a campfire, Gichi rushed over and he was overjoyed when it was his old village. Gichi got to see his mother again. The kingdom would quickly be at war, so they were preparing to emigrate to another place. Gichi helped them tie up their belongings and set off. The road to get there opened exactly once a month. They wished Arata and Konoha bon voyage. Gichi thanked them wholeheartedly, but it was time to say goodbye. He called his brother to follow, but Kanata pushed his little brother away. The waterfall poured back to block two brothers. Kanata couldn't go with Gichi. It was his old bandits that took him away from his mother. Now it's time for Gichi to be happy with his mother. Arata pulled him away. Walking for a while they stopped in the woods to rest. There was no sense of war going on, it was peaceful. Suddenly a beast appeared. Konoha was not afraid because this one was very gentle. But it still chased them. It wasn't until much later that he learned what caused it. It was a little girl who stole the beast's egg that drove it so mad. Kanata sacrificed for the monster to chase. The little girl held the egg like a treasure. She had to bring it back to her master's wife to drink because it was very nutritious. At this moment the egg hatched. Kanata was also saved by someone else. Suddenly Arata fainted, and when he woke up in the girl's village. Kanata was always there to take care of him. It wasn't safe here. The ruler of this village was Okiha, who served Kanagi. At this moment Okiha entered to meet them. Meanwhile, Kanagi stands in front of someone's grave vowing to become king to free his sister. Suddenly, an urgent announcement arrived, and Shusi Akachi arrived in Kanagi's territory to kill innocent people without hesitation. Arata and Okiha went out for a walk. The war was almost over. Why it had to be war, and there was a way to end this. All Shusi swore to serve only one person. That was when the king appeared. Kanagi angrily guessed that the place Akachi would go next was the village Okiha was in charge of. Now that Akachi has arrived, he told Okiha all the stories of Kanagi's assassination of the princess and wanted Okiha to take his side. Episode 6. Okiha got rid of everything, Akachi said. He had already sworn allegiance to Kanagi, so he could only go with his master. Akachi pulled out his weapon and threatened Okiha's wife. His wife was still pregnant, so Okiha was forced to take his side. The soul along with the sword merged into one and entered Akachi's body. When the task was done, he had a change of heart instantly. He killed Okaha's servant and wife. Their location was already exposed, and they turned pale when this guy was too barbaric. At this moment Kanagi arrived, watching Okaha's wife laying dead in front of him. Kanagi angrily rushed to attack Akachi. Fire against earth. Akachi only needed to build an earth wall to be able to block Kanagi's attack. With him the war for the throne had begun. He had to get it at all costs. Kanagi was disadvantageous to this absurd power. Akachi pulled up the pile of weapons he had had before. With this number, Kanagi never had a chance to win. Akachi disarmed him but didn't kill Kanagi hurriedly until Kanagi said to surrender to him. Akachi hit Kanagi. Arata couldn't stand to watch anymore. He ran out and scolded the murderer in the face. He wanted to be king but he killed innocent people, and there were lives that hadn't been born yet. Akachi didn't care from the moment the princess passed away that she would just take someone else's side or she herself would be surrendered. Akachi left shortly after that. Little girl Koha sadly ran to Kanagi. He was so strong that she asked Kanagi to bring back her master Okiha. Kanagi was also powerless. If he had surrendered to others as one with them, he would never return. He'd already lost his weapon. Kanagi just apologized and walked away. Arata ran after and stopped him. Kanagi must have known this was going to happen when he killed the princess. If he really wanted to be king, why he gave up so easily? Kanagi angrily brushed his hand and ran away. Arata, in the modern world, sat looking at the pictures in the room, spotting someone watching her and chasing after immediately. It turned out to be that bookworm. He was ashamed to see Arata, so he just came return the game and ran away. In the other world, Arata sat in a corner not knowing what to do. The princess gave him the task of taking over the country. Arata tormented himself that he was too weak to do anything. Kanata took the stone and threw it at his head. If so, practice to become stronger. But Arata didn't want to do things like Akachi. Konoha remembered something about when the warden took his side, not by coercion but by himself. That's why Arata could use his powers, and Akachi was limited. Maybe this was from the power of the sword Arata was holding. As a child Konoha heard stories about the original sword of all. Maybe the sword Arata held was it. Arata read aloud the name of his sword and bright light shone across for every nook and cranny on the continent.